Hi everyone, welcome back to This Book Belongs to Pam, and this is Bookmas Day 6. We are almost at the 1 week mark of Bookmas, and I am so impressed by myself that I'm able to keep this up. Today, I don't have anything planned really. Obviously, aside from my day job, I have reading sprints later tonight. It's my read-along sprints where I'm gonna be reading Clockwork Princes, and I'm gonna do that sprint until I finish the first third of the book. So I thought today, since I don't have much planned, I'm gonna talk about all the books that I read in October and November because I have not done a wrap up for those books yet because I was in a content slump and then end the day with the reading sprints. But obviously we have our spin the wheel challenge, so we don't know, maybe it's gonna throw a spanner in the works. Hopefully not the challenge where I have to go outside. Okay, let's spin the wheel for the Bookmas advent calendar. Okay, this I can do. It says post a bookish reel or TikTok. I'm gonna have a look around, like scroll through Instagram or TikTok to find like a thing that I wanted to do. And also my body hurts today. It hurts. I definitely overdid myself when I tried that 3-pie boulder. It really messed up my body. I feel so tired and I didn't even climb that much yesterday. I'm gonna end my video for today, so I don't think I'll see you until much later, like in the afternoon. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and cue the working montage. It's been a couple of hours since I actually picked up the camera. I was just editing Bookmas Day 5. I had a bunch of work, and now I have some time to chat with you about the books that I read in the month of October. I know this is so late, but I didn't do an October wrap up because I only read 5 books in October, and one of them was supposed to be for another theme reading vlog, and I'm still doing that vlog, but I'm doing it towards the end of the year. I was like holding off on doing the wrap up because I don't want to spoil the review that I have for that book, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna go through all the books that I read for the month of October. I have sprints later in about 2 hours, so I'm not sure if I can get to November, but if not, we could do November tomorrow or some other day. But for now, let's chat about the books that I read in October. So in total, I read 5 books. That includes 1 manga, 2 books that are part of a series, 1 graphic novel, and 1 audiobook. It's a very interesting month. I feel like I used up a lot of different mediums of reading, which is quite fun. So the first book that I finished is Blood on the Tracks Volume 10 by Shuzo Oshimi. This is the 10th volume, so it's really hard to talk about this without spoiling it, so I'm gonna give you sort of like an overview of what the manga series is about, and then I'm gonna jump into a little bit of spoilers just to talk about this specific volume. Blood on the Tracks is a horror manga, and we're following Seichi, who is a high school student, I believe. Seichi has a very obsessive and overprotective mother. One day, while they were on a hiking trip with his cousins, an accident happens, and this kind of messes up with Seichi because he really can't tell anyone this secret, and it's eating away at him. So that's sort of the premise. I can't really tell you much because the first volume is like very surprising. It like shocked me. So I don't want to rob you of that. So I don't want to say too much. Now I'm gonna jump into spoilers for volume 10. So you can jump to this timestamp right here, somewhere on the screen. Jump to this point if you don't want to be spoiled. If you're still here, then you're okay with being spoiled. For this specific volume, Seichi was interrogated by the police about the allegations that his mother was the one who pushed his cousin down the ravine that ended up with the cousin in a coma trauma and everything like that.
Why did your mother do this? What happened? Why didn't you stop her? Why didn't you tell the police?
The way he answered the interrogation was very straightforward.
Oh, I'm actually a victim of abuse, and this is why my mother did that. This is why I didn't say anything, because this abuse was affecting me in that way.
And it feels very scripted. It feels like it was fed into him, those lines. And I'm trying to put it in context within like the Japanese culture, the Japanese language as well, because obviously I'm reading a translation. So I don't know if there's something like amiss or like something got lost in the translation. But it felt really unlikely that a high school kid would answer a police interrogator like that. So it wasn't super believable for me, and I don't know why it was done that way. Aside from that, in this volume, we saw Seichi and Fukishi, his classmate, who is, I guess, for all intents and purposes, his girlfriend. They're becoming a lot closer because they're talking about all of their family problems. They're talking about their trauma, essentially their trauma bonding. And I don't know if this is going to be explored, but they're starting to have a very codependent relationship. I'm curious to see if this is going to be explored further or it's just a consequence of what's been happening in Seichi's life. And then at the very end of this book, Shige, his cousin who fell down a ravine and was put in a coma, it was downright creepy how he appeared, and I think it's like a hallucination. I'm not 100% sure at this point. And there's so much reference to the mountain, like the mountain where they fell, but also like a different kind of mountain. I'm curious to know why the mother pushed Shige. Like, what's the point? Why does the mother have that kind of impulse? And I'm not sure if that's going to be explored further. Those are the questions that I had in mind when I read this 10th volume. I gave this one 3.75 stars. The next book that I read is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. So this was the book that I was reading for my series read-along sprints. Right now I'm doing the Infernal Devices, but before the Infernal Devices, I was reading the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and this is the second book. Within this month, I also finished the third book, the finale, which is A Curse for True Love. The Ballad of Never After. Again, this is the sequel, so I can't fully, say what's going on because it will spoil the first book. I'm giving this book 4 stars. Somewhat purely because of the ending. Like 4 stars for that very bold ending. Ballad of Never After carries on with the magical and whimsical storytelling that I have loved in Once Upon a Broken Heart. This one actually felt a little bit more like a storybook because it went into the history, a little bit more in the lore, like the great houses, the rise and fall of the Valors, like the most loved royal family in this series. And I really found myself very curious and wanting to know more about the world, the history. In this book though, this is kind of like an echo of what I felt in Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I really did not like Ava, and I don't like being in her head. She is kind of irredeemable to me at this point. I forget what her age is, but she's very whiny and she makes stupid decisions left, right, and center. Like, it makes sense. You can't always have a main character that's like super smart and super intellectual or like sarcastic or witty or street smart or whatever. I get that, but I hate reading it. I kind of just learned to live with it because, I mean, he's our main character. What am I gonna do? Now, Jax is his usual infuriating self. He's always like hot and cold. You never really know where he stands. And I know that that's like a lot of people's, including me, guilty pleasure. In general, if I were just to be objective about these characters, I don't like them. With that said, I don't read these books, even the Caraval trilogy. I don't read them for the characters and like the development of the character or even the plot. It's really about the vibes. It's about the vibes. It's how the world has been built, the lore surrounding it, the different magical elements and artifacts and history that we're exploring in each book. I like how Stephanie Garber expands the world with every book. I love a world that I can imagine and that I feel like it's been lived in. And of course, it definitely delivered on all of my expectations on the ending. Like everyone, when this came out, everyone was shocked with the ending of this book. And it definitely delivered on that. I love the ending and I applaud the audacity. It definitely left me wanting to read the next book ASAP. Speaking of the final book, the ending of the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, which is A Curse for True Love. I know when this book came out, everyone was so excited. Partly because of the bombastic ending of Ballad of Never After. And I know that a lot of people were disappointed. The ending of the second book really made me expect something big to happen, but it really didn't deliver in that sense. Not to say that it's a bad book. If you have those expectations, then you will definitely be a little bit disappointed by this book. I like the concept. Like, I like where this went. Again, I can't really say much about what happens because it's gonna be a spoiler. But I do think that the book held back a little bit. I don't know if that's because it's marketed for YA. I feel like we could have dug a little deeper into the things that we're tackling in this book. A big part of this book is the gaslighting that Ava experiences as a consequence of what happened in the second book. And I feel like we could have explored that a little bit more. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Even if it feels not right. Like, even if it's not fun to read. It was definitely covered in the number of pages, but those pages are largely repetitive. We don't really sink deeper into that concept. We just kept repeating and repeating that, you know, that happens. Apollo is a key character in this book. Hopefully that's not a spoiler. I think Garber wanted to do a lot with his development, which is with his arc. And she ran out of room to do that because we are told two things about Apollo. One, he is very much madly in love with Ava to the point of obsession, to the point of possessiveness. And two, he is also very fixated on the idea of leaving a lasting legacy. And he's essentially struggling between these two things throughout this book, which I love. I love a good internal struggle. But how he picked one over the other was kind of vague for me. I feel like it wasn't too convincing and it was rushed. That brings me to the ending of the book, which was very cheesy and a little bit plot holy. But again, I have to remember that this book feels like it's marketed towards the younger side of YA. If I keep that in mind, everything that happens and how everything was resolved makes sense. Like, overall, the lore, the world building of the entire series, including Caraval, is still my favorite part about Stephanie Garber's universe that she has created here. The plot itself maybe didn't pan out the way that we wanted it to or the way that we expected it to. Maybe the characters aren't as developed as we want them to be, but I cannot deny that the world that they're all set in is very good. So yeah, I gave this one 3.25 stars. And then I also read my first ever Junji Ito horror manga. This is gonna be part of my Reading Junji Ito for the First Time series. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my thoughts. So I read Fragments of Horror. This is a compilation of different horror stories, which is, I think, what most of his works are. This was my first Junji Ito, and I thought it was a good taste test, a sampler, if you will, and it was a good introduction to the types of stories that he's telling and his art style. Most of the short stories that I read here felt like a complete thought, and it has the horrific illustration to match. The most horrific one for sure was a story featured in the cover of this book, which I believe is called Tomio Red Turtleneck. There was a moment there where I almost threw my tablet because it was so disgusting. I also enjoyed Whispering Money and Gentle Goodbye. I thought the ideas were interesting, also very unique, and I would honestly read a longer story with those concepts. There was one story though that kind of gave me the ick, and that is Magami Nanakuse? Is that Magami? Megami. I don't know if I wrote this wrong, but anyway, that Nanakuse story that gave me the ick, and I don't know when that was written, and I don't know if I just missed something. I think it didn't handle that sensitive topic well enough for me to enjoy reading that short story. There seems to be a recurring concept of femme fatales, or women being the horrific / evil character, and I don't know if that's a thing in Junji Ito's stories, but specifically for this collection, all of the... I'm trying to remember, but I think all of the evil characters are women. And I don't know if that's a theme. I hope not. I gave Fragments of Horror 3.75 stars. And the last book for October is Lady Killer by Catherine Wood. This is also part of a vlog that I'm actually mostly done filming. Like, I just need to do the intro, outro for it. I'm not gonna say what's the theme of the vlog. This is a mystery thriller. I'm forgetting the names. We're following Gia and she has her best friend. They kind of had a falling out because Gia wanted to go into this whirlwind marriage with a guy after meeting him for just like 2 to 3 months, and her friend was kind of angry at her because she feels like her friend was being very impulsive. She's angry at her because she cares for her, but they also had something in their past that kind of like strained their relationship a little bit. Like 10 years ago something happened to her best friend that kind of affected their friendship a little bit. But one day Gia was kind of like extending an olive branch, I guess, to her best friend and invited her to go to Sweden. Is it Sweden? I think it's Sweden. To see the Northern Lights, and this has been a dream for them. She decides to accept Gia's olive branch and she goes to Sweden, but then Gia doesn't show up. We cut to a chapter in Gia's perspective, but this happens like in the past, like 3 months before or like a month before, and we see Gia in her home in Greece and she's trying to sell the property. There seems to be like trouble in paradise between her and her new husband of 3 months, and it seems to have to do with like money, and we kind of get a glimpse of something bad happening, and that's kind of all you need to know as we start this book. Mystery thriller books for me feels like autumn books, if that even makes sense. I don't have autumn in the Philippines, but it feels like books that I would read when the weather is cold, when you're kind of cozying up in the rain. That's what mystery thriller books are for me. But this book is 100% summer vibes. I really enjoyed all of the Greek island imagery, and I think that's what this book did best, is just putting me in this Greek island and like giving me the lifestyle, giving me the scenery. The sharp contrast between the setting and the thriller plot kept me so interested. It started out quite interesting, and I really enjoyed the domestic thriller that it was going for in the very beginning of the book. There was a clear favorite between the POVs. We get so much more page count on Gia's POV. Abby, that's the name of the other girl, the best friend. Abby's chapters were so devoid of excitement, while Gia's manuscript had all of the, all of the comings and goings of a thriller movie. Whenever I get to an Abby chapter, it's just like, let's just go back to Gia's chapter because her Abby's chapter is so boring. I appreciate what the ending was trying to do, but I feel like it lacked conviction. It's more of like a fizzling out rather than a mic drop of an ending, and I think it's because the author tried to do so much towards the ending to create this plot twist that it didn't really make sense towards the end. It was okay, it was good while I was reading it. I gave this one 3.25 stars. Overall, it was an okay month. This was a slumpy month for me. I had quite a hard time finishing all of the books that I read. I think if it wasn't for my series read-along sprints, I wouldn't be able to finish the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, but because I had those sprints, I was able to just, set focus time to just read these books. Otherwise, it was really hard for me to pick up any of the books that I was reading. Those are all the books I read in October, and I think I'm gonna reserve the chat for November books to tomorrow, or like on a different bookmas day, because I did read a lot more in November compared to October. I think I'm gonna take a break, watch a couple more bookmas videos, and then I am going to do my sprints. I love when the book matches up with the current time. Say what now? I'm literally imagining their father as the worm in Dune right now. I am actually throwing up because of Jen and Will. quick update because I know that the battery in this is almost dead, but I'm in the last sprint, last 8 minutes, 9 minutes of the sprint, and I just finished reading chapters 1 to 8 of Clockwork Princess, and that's like 199 pages, and oh my gosh, this book is gonna end me. This book is gonna break my heart. Chapter 8 was brutal. I am gonna be unwell by the end of this book. I don't think I'm ready for it. Oh my gosh, I still need to do the bookish TikTok. I'm gonna take a break and then I'm gonna do that. Guys, I did it. I filmed and uploaded a bookish reel. I might upload it on TikTok tomorrow, who knows. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end the day here. It's 12:59 in the morning and I'm so tired. I love doing sprints, don't get me wrong, but it is very tiring. I'm naturally an introverted person, so having to turn it on, I suppose, for more than 2 hours is tiring. But I do love doing sprints, but it is draining a little bit. So I think I'm gonna end the day here. That's my dog's foot. I'm gonna end the day here and I'll see you guys tomorrow for Bookmas Day 7. Thank you again for hanging out with me today and good night. See you in the next one.